first of all, let's be clear. Any crime is one crime too many. So everything I'm going to say now to help try and put this in context is not to excuse, is not to take the focus around, you know, the seriousness of crime in any community.
Sure.
But I also want to counterbalance that by saying, you know, I truly believe that Director Casalio believes that by and large we live in a safe community, and expecting that we would spend some time talking about this, I want to kind of pull what doesn't get added to the report when people look at the tables and the numbers, which is some of there's a lengthy disclaimer about how to understand this, and what they say is the rankings are merely a quick choice made by user data. They provide no insight into the many variables that mold crime in a particular town, city, state, region, or other jurisdiction. Consequently, these rankings lead to simplistic or incomplete analysis that often create misleading perceptions, adversely affecting cities along with their residents. And the only thing that this compares is the crime rate based on population. So
yes.
as a small population, any increases in numbers have a heavy statistical weight when combined with our declining population.
Right.
So that's all the policy wonk side of this. But
now I'm just to the clarification that you just named there, was that part? What's the was the source of that, the report itself, or was that what you? It's on
the same website that the FBI and the Department of Justice use to report their stats. But you got to dig a little deep to find that. And then a couple other things I want to point out is there are 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. If you look at the report, there are 276 communities that report, which means that there's 20% of the state isn't represented, and a lot of those that aren't represented are small communities, and the majority of the communities in Berkshire County aren't represented. So just to look in our area, there are no stats for Clarksburg, there are no stats for Cheshire, Lanesborough, Windsor, Savoy, smaller communities. So again, if you were to include them with their small population, understanding that any incident would be magnified
by the stats.
You might see a different picture if all these small cities and towns reported. That would be as unfair to compare them on a safety ranking basis as it is for us.
Right.
So let's talk about the things that we're doing. One of the things, we did have a homicide in North Adams at the beginning of this year,
right? And
that's not recorded in the data that was reported for 2017. It will be reflected in 2018. But one of the things that happened in response to that is that the Elizabeth Freeman Center provided some training, particularly around police response to the LGBTQ community. So a different level of training and sensitivity. The North Adams Police Department was recognized by NAMI of Berkshire County a couple weeks ago for the work that they're doing on understanding trauma and mental illness in law enforcement, and they've got some funding to have a trauma counselor doing ride-alongs with them to help with the incidents. I've talked to Director Casalio about this, and he would say that we also have an issue of the crime that we do have largely being related to a couple of issues. The opioid epidemic. So how those two things interrelate to each other, and the times when we have multiple people responsible, or individuals responsible for multiple items in the report. So somebody who commits multiple acts, that each of those it's one person,
right?
And so what this report also doesn't talk about is the role of the courts. So often you have people who commit an offense and are released on parole, set out on bail, pending trial, and are on the streets to reoffend. So I think we need to look at the justice side of that. And then the last point I want to make, actually second to last, the second to last point I want to make is that this also stems from how we report. There's no standard requirement in this FBI report for how you enter data into your system, to the system that you're using to report to them. And the North Adams police take the approach of, if they respond to a call, they create a record in this database. So even if that record doesn't lead to an arrest, doesn't lead to a conviction, a report of a crime is enough. So even if there's not a finding, or there's evidence that something didn't happen, that data still exists. And I think that's the right way to do it. So in one way, we're being penalized on this ranking system for reporting at, for how we choose to report.
So if I hear that last point correctly, if somebody alleges an assault or something, and the police have to go out and check it out, and they do everything, and they find out, well, it really wasn't, or something, right, for whatever reason, but it wasn't. So
the call gets logged, even though there's no the report of an assault is, and right or wrong, there's police resources being used. So I believe it's worth capturing that information.
Sure.
And then the last point, I'm going to end where I began. That's all trying to put this in context, but it doesn't change the fact that we work with our law enforcement, with our police, to make the community as safe as we can make it, to be as responsive as we can, to investigate, to close cases. Again, we know that there are, we like so many communities are struggling and suffering with the opioid epidemic. So how we work with the DA's office, with the drug task force, to address those issues plays into our response to crime as well.